POV. You just found out the cartel put a bounty on you. You find out on a Tuesday from a source you've had for 4 years who has never been wrong about anything important. He sends 2 words on the encrypted app. No punctuation. Just, Salya. Get out now. You stare at the message for a moment. You are sitting in the office of the newspaper in Culiacan, where you have worked for 11 years. It is 10:47 in the morning. There is a cup of coffee on your desk that is still warm and an article half written on your screen about a municipal official whose construction contracts have been generating numbers that don't add up, and that the numbers, when added up correctly, lead to a name that leads to a plaza, and the plaza leads to a specific cartel faction that you have been writing about for 3 years. The article is the reason for the 2 words. You know this without asking. You don't ask. You close the laptop. You put your phone in your pocket. You stand up. Your editor is across the room. He is a man who has been running this newspaper for 19 years and who has watched 5 journalists leave Sinaloa under circumstances that range from voluntary relocation to circumstances that the newspaper covered as homicides with the specific grief of an institution, burying its own. He looks at you when you stand. He reads something in the way you're standing. He says, "What happened?" You say, "I need to go." He says, "How bad?" You say, "I don't know yet." He nods once. This is the specific nod of a man who has had this conversation before and who knows that more words don't help and that the one word he wants to say, go, is already understood. You go. The parking structure beneath the building is where you stop and think for 90 seconds before you drive anywhere, because driving without thinking is how people in your situation make the first mistake, and the first mistake in this situation is the only mistake that matters. You think about where you're going. Not home. Home is the first place. The first place is the wrong place, because the first place is where the information that preceded the 2 words has already located you, and home is where the information expects you to go. You think about your daughter. She is 7 years old and she is at school 4 kilometers from the newspaper, and the school is the second place they would expect you to go. And the second place is also the wrong place, and thinking about the school and your daughter being at the school produces a specific quality of fear that you have been managing for 3 years in the way that journalists who cover this beat manage it, at a distance, as an abstraction, as the professional risk that you accepted when you accepted the assignment, and that is no longer at a distance. You call your wife from the car before you start the engine. She teaches at the university. She answers on the 2nd ring. You say, "I need you to pick up Elena from school right now. Don't go home. Go to your mother's, don't tell me where exactly on this phone. Just go." She has been married to you for 9 years. She has been married to a journalist who covers organized crime in Sinaloa for 9 years. She has been waiting for this call in the specific way that partners of people on this beat wait for it, not with expectation, with the background awareness that the call exists in the range of possible things and that their job is to be ready to respond to it if it comes. She has already thought about what she would do. She has a plan in the way that people who are afraid of specific things make plans. Not dramatically, methodically, in the quiet of ordinary evenings when the children are asleep. She says, "Okay." She says, "And you?" You say, "I'll be in touch when I can," on the other phone. She says, "Okay." She hangs up. She is already moving. You drive out of the parking structure and you drive in a direction that is not home and not school and not any destination that the information about your daily patterns would predict. You drive and you think. CJNG assassinated Ivan Morales Coales, a witness who had testified against El Menchito during his trial in the United States. Al Jazeera, you covered that story. You wrote about it. You wrote about it with the specific professional care of a journalist who understood what the killing meant, not just for the witness, not just for the trial, but for every person in Mexico whose relationship to the cartel involves information. The killing was a message. You received the message professionally as a journalist and wrote about it and continued. Now the message is addressed to you specifically. You have been covering organized crime in Sinaloa for 11 years. In those 11 years, you have written about cartel finances, cartel territorial disputes, cartel penetration of municipal governments, cartel connections to state-level politicians, cartel relationships with law enforcement at the municipal, state, and federal levels. You have published things that made people uncomfortable in every direction. The cartel, the government, The military, the business community that coexists with the cartel in the specific negotiated way that business coexists with power in Sinaloa. Criminal groups use drones for reconnaissance against law enforcement actors, rival criminal groups, and entire local populations. Cartels fly drones to track civil society activists, business community members, or local government officials to ascertain whether they are liaising with local police forces, federal officials, or rival criminal groups. Inside crime, you know this. You reported it. You did not know it was being used on you specifically until the two words from the source, who has never been wrong about anything important. The source knows what a bounty means. You know what a bounty means. A tiered bounty system disseminated by cartels incentivizes violence against targets, with payouts escalating based on target type. Center for Strategic and International Studies, you are not a federal officer with a $50,000 number attached to your name. You are a journalist. The number for a journalist is different and lower, and it doesn't need to be high because the men who respond to bounty postings in Culiacan don't need to be wealthy. They need a number that is more than what they are currently making and that can be produced in a single transaction, rather than accumulated over months of legitimate labor. The math of your death is simple enough for any young man with a weapon and a phone to calculate. You drive north out of the city on a route you have used before for exactly this kind of contingency, the route that avoids the checkpoints whose locations have been known to specific cartel factions for long enough that the checkpoints are instruments of monitoring rather than just enforcement. Spotter networks in neighborhoods deploy spotters equipped with firearms and radio communications who track movements in real time, relaying coordinates. Center for Strategic and International Studies, this is the infrastructure you've been writing about from the outside. You are now inside it. The spotters on the corners of the city you're driving through are reporting vehicles the way you've described in your articles. And one of those vehicles is yours, and the vehicle is known in the specific way that a journalist's vehicle is known in a city that has been watching journalists for a long time. You switch vehicles at your cousin's mechanic shop on the edge of the city. He is a man who asks no questions because he has a family and the questions have consequences. And he has loved you since you were children, and that love produces this specific practical expression. He hands you the keys to a truck that has no connection to your name and he says, "Drive safely," and he doesn't ask where you're going. You drive north. The highway opens flat through the Sinaloa lowlands, and the flatness is both exposure and relief. Exposure because there is nowhere to disappear, and relief because anything following you is visible in a rearview mirror that shows a road with nothing on it. The phone that you called your wife from is off. Removed battery, in the glove box. The other phone, the separate device registered to a name that is not your name, that your source knows and that your editor knows and that your wife knows, is on. This is the phone you've been maintaining for 3 years against this specific possibility. The possibility has been present for 3 years in the professional background of covering this beat, and you prepared for it the way you prepared for everything, methodically, without drama, in the quiet of ordinary evenings when the children were asleep. You think about the article that was half written on the screen. The article is the reason. You understand the causal chain without needing it explained. The construction contracts. The municipal official. The numbers that don't add up. The name that leads to the plaza. The plaza belongs to a specific faction, and the faction has been watching the newspaper the way organizations watch the institutions that produce information about them. And the information in the article was specific enough and sourced enough and close enough to publication that the decision was made to communicate through the bounty rather than wait for the article. The article won't run now. This is the intended effect. Not your death specifically. Your death is one available instrument. The intended effect is the article's non-publication, which is achieved through your death or through your departure from Culiacan, or through the specific chilling of your colleagues who know what happened, and who will each perform their own calculation about which stories are worth writing in an environment that produces this outcome for the stories that get too close. You have been writing about this mechanism for 3 years, the mechanism of silence enforced through fear, the specific way that organized crime controls its public narrative, not by managing the media directly, but by managing the